Story 1. I accidentally got my sister pregnant, and we aren't telling anyone to make her rich husband believe it's his. There's all sorts of stuff wrong with this title. I just almost don't want to read the whole story. But here we go. My sister and I grew up very close. We are close in age. I'm 22, she's 25. So we got to experience a lot of life things around the same time. Because of that, we became best friends super early on. Growing up, I was absolutely never attracted to her in any sort of way. I also believe it's worth stating that I have never had any sort of brother/sister fetish or any sort of, I don't think I can say that I word either, fetish either. And after everything that's happened, I still don't. 3 years ago, I started college and moved to a different state. A few weeks later, my sister's longtime boyfriend asked her to marry him. It's the first time I was ever really super far away from my family, and it bothered me really badly. I got super bad depression and became really homesick. Around 7 months later, I got to fly back home and see my family for my sister's wedding day. It was one of the biggest days of my life, seeing my best friend marry the man of her dreams. Now, a tiny bit of backstory. Her husband's dad is insanely wealthy, a really big name in the pharmaceutical business. He not only paid 100% of their huge wedding, but also bought them a gorgeous house in full, apparently with a check as a wedding gift from the dad and mom. I went back to college and life back home went on normally. I was still really depressed and homesick, but decided to do what I had to do and just push on. I was able to visit back home a few more times because of holidays. The one time I went back home other than for a holiday was a surprise party for my parents' 30th anniversary. Usually when I went home, I would get picked up at the airport by my dad and I would stay at their house in a spare bedroom. But because this was a big secret, my sister picked me up and I stayed at her house for the 5 days I was in town. The party was great and everything was wonderful. There was a lot of alcohol there and I definitely drank my fair share. The party ended around 10 p.m. My sister and I were both pretty drunk and took an Uber back to her house about 15 minutes away. Her husband works long hours and was unable to take off work this day, and by the time we got home, he was already asleep in their bedroom. We decided to go into the spare bedroom that I was sleeping in just to catch up and talk. We chatted for about an hour and a half, just talking about life and stuff. We were both pretty drunk at this point, and it was getting pretty late. I had to pee and told her I would be right back. So I got up and walked into the bathroom attached to the bedroom I was staying in and started to pee. Didn't think anything of it. When I walked back into the room, my sister was laughing. I asked her what was so funny when she admitted, I somehow managed to go 22 years without seeing your penis. I was super confused and sort of embarrassed. I asked her what she was talking about. She told me that she could see into the bathroom mirror, which reflected where I was standing to pee. Well, was it worth the wait? I said, drunkenly laughing with her. Just like that, the mood of the room completely changed. It was like someone flipped a switch. We kept bantering back and forth for a few minutes when, out of absolutely nowhere, I started kissing her on the lips pretty aggressively. I immediately realized what I was doing and started to pull away when she grabbed onto my head and pulled me back. I got extremely turned on, and she did too. It didn't feel like we were brother and sister at all. It felt like we were longtime friends who finally gave in to each other's lust. Things got heated quickly, and before we knew it, we were having spicy time. It lasted for around 10 minutes before we both finished. We laughed it off nervously and got dressed quickly. We chatted for just a little bit longer before finally deciding to call it a night. It felt so wrong and weird afterwards. The rest of my trip was super awkward. Us having to pretend that everything was normal, with this being the biggest thing on our mind, was challenging. But before I knew it, my trip was over and I went back to college. Weeks later, I received a text from my sister asking if I had some time to talk alone. My heart sank because I knew it was going to be about that night. I put it off for hours before finally calling her. She called me to tell me that she was pregnant and she's 100% certain that the baby is mine. I was speechless. I wasn't expecting something like this at all. We talked and tried to figure out what we should do. We were cornered in a situation that was so above our heads we couldn't even figure out where to start. Abortion came into the discussion multiple times, but neither of us wanted that. We decided that it would be best to act like her husband is the father and raise it like so without ever telling anyone ever because of how wealthy his family is. She's due the week of June 10th. Absolutely no one knows or has even the slightest clue. This is a secret that my sister and I put our life on to protect. Things will never be the same between us. The last handful of months, I have become a heavy drinker and party goer and failing almost every one of my classes. It messed me up a ton. It's going to be super weird whenever I have kids now, too. It's so weird how a quick, dumb decision could change the rest of your life. It doesn't sound like you're getting away with this. I mean, and it's kind of really messed up how considerations on how to act in a situation were dependent on someone having a lot of money. If this person, this husband, ever finds out, this is just going to become a huge, huge blow up in your face. And it sounds like it's affecting you very much. I don't know how it's affecting the sister. I'm thinking it's going to affect her in some way too. It's just really messed up all around. I think it's going to come to bite you in the butt much later. Story 2. My husband is missing. I think his parents are involved. My husband was away for work last week and was supposed to come home Saturday. He was not responsive until I texted his mother to ask if she'd heard from him. He then answered his phone immediately after at 3 p.m. to tell me, "I love you. I'm not coming back. I need to do some soul searching. I'll talk to you later this week." He was on the speakerphone and sounded very strange, like I imagine a hostage would sound. We have no problems in our marriage. I was completely blindsided. My husband has depression, paranoia, and undiagnosed autism. His father is a silver-tongued narcissist who has always manipulated and abused him. His parents have always hated me and tried to get rid of me, going so far as to bribe a therapist to tell him to leave me, tried to verbally force him to leave me, and even went so far as to convince my husband that the police were going to unalive him if he stayed in our state. His father is a powerful figure in their home state, let's say state B, while we live in state A. I went to my husband's work Monday after a coworker told me he was there, but then I received cryptic text messages from his phone telling me to leave and he'll contact me later. I'm beginning to suspect he is not in possession of his cell phone at all, and I'm terrified his parents had him committed without his consent or false legal charge against him. I haven't heard anything since. I'm filing a missing persons report here in State A today. I've told both his phone and his mother's, who's been refusing all contact with me, that I will be doing so, but aside from that, I have no idea what to do. Sort of sounds like you have suspicion on this, and again, I am in no way able to provide legal advice. Hopefully someone in the comments might be able to offer some help as to what to do. Kind of sounds like you're going to have to at least, lawyer up or find a detective. If you know somebody who knows any good detectives, probably avail yourselves of their expertise. Hope you can find your husband, and hope you can get all this straightened out.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 3. Girl does 0% of the work on a huge project and gets 0% of the credit. This story takes place during my third year of college. I was taking a class where the entire grade was determined by a semester-long final project. We were supposed to be in groups of 3 on the project, but the third guy in our group had more sense than me and bailed early. This left just me and Lazy Girl, hereafter known as LG. LG didn't do anything the entire semester. I would ask her to work on pieces of the project, but she always had an excuse for why it wasn't done yet, or in her case, started. Now, I don't want any confrontation with this girl, as she was my friend at the time, but I finally lost it one night towards the end of the semester. I asked her to meet at my house to work on the project, but something important came up. Fed up with this one-sided partnership, I decided to air my woes at the local bars. And guess who I ran into? LG and her boyfriend drinking. She made up some hogwash excuse, and I made a plan. I powered through the entire assignment except for the conclusion, which I asked LG to finish. I held out exactly 0 hope that she would finish this section, so I quickly finished it myself and turned in my project with a little note to the teacher. The note detailed how I had done literally everything for the project and that despite my best efforts, I could not get LG to contribute. I said that I was turning in my version and that our conclusion section may differ as I'd asked her to actually do that part herself. So here's a little tidbit about our final projects. We each had to turn one in. LG here not only didn't do the conclusion, she didn't turn in a project at all. She tried calling and whining at me for not giving her credit, to which I went off on her for not doing anything on the entire project. I mentioned how I even gave her the opportunity to turn in my work for a grade if she'd only do one thing. She hung up after that, and that was the last time we spoke. So, that is great that you have a professor or teacher that will be willing to give you the credit for it. What kind of grade did you get? Did you get a passing grade? Did you get a good grade? And what did she get? Was part of the grade determined on cooperation? It sounds like it wasn't in this case, but yeah, she was just hoping that she could just do Control-C, Control-V into a Google Docs document and turn your work in as her own or something like that? Or she was just expecting you to give her credit? Guess what happens? You mess around and find out. Story 4. The customer who tipped a fake $100 bill. I work as a server. This one guy always comes to the restaurant I work at. He's usually pretty quiet and never tips too well. Most of the time he comes with a couple of friends or by himself and sits at the bar and watches a sports game. I've never had a problem with him until he came in one time with a date. I've never seen the woman before, so I assumed they were new to dating. Anyways, they sat at a table this time in a more quiet part of the restaurant, and they were sitting at one of my tables. I had no problem with them, and everything was going fine. They asked for the check, and I went right around the corner from their table. It was close by, so I was quick. As I was coming back to the table, the guy says to the woman, "Watch this," as he puts down a $100 bill on the table. He saw me, and he was joking like, "Oh, you weren't supposed to see that." I was ecstatic either way, even though it was so obvious he was trying to impress the woman. I didn't care. I waited till they left to go grab the $100 bill. Well, when I unfolded it, it was one of those fake $100 bills, I guess for pranks. That means this freaking guy planned this out to impress this woman. It was so frustrating because I needed the money, but at the same time, I thought it was because I did a great job. Either the woman was in on it, or he decided to be a jerk in two different ways. Told my manager, and he was like, "Wow, that's ridiculous." I decided to hold on to it because I knew the day would come when I could get back at this guy. 2 weeks later, my manager recognized the guy, and while I was working at the time, I was in a different side of the restaurant, which was already full. My manager found me and asked if I wanted that customer's table as well, and told me he was with the woman from last time. I often joked with my manager about throwing the fake $100 bill back on the table in front of that woman if he ever came back in to embarrass him. I thought to myself, yeah, I may be busy already, but I also thought, sure, what's one more table? Told my manager, absolutely, no problem, with a smirk on my face. Before I went over to their table, I ran out to my car to grab the fake $100 bill that was sitting in my cup holder for this exact moment. I got to their table and they instantly recognized me. The woman seemed normal, but the guy looked like he was nervous. I pretended nothing happened all the way until I got their check. When I brought the check back, I placed it down on the table as well as the fake 100, but left it unfolded so the fake part was showing. I looked at the guy and said, "Hey, not sure if you remember me from last time, but I believe you forgot this. Just returning it because I believed it was too much." The woman looked very confused, so I instantly knew she was not a part of it. But the guy got all nervous and said, I don't know what that is." I said, "Oh, my mistake," and laughed and said to the woman, "Have a good night," and walked away. When I came back, there was a big $0 on the signed copy and a $50 bill, real this time, where the woman was sitting after they had left. One can only assume that the guy didn't want to tip on his card, so he wrote obnoxiously big zeros on the tip, and that $50 just happened to be where the woman was sitting, so I'm hoping she had placed it there. Now, I don't know what happened with the couple or if they stayed together, but I haven't seen them back since, and it's been a few weeks, and I really hope she looks for his red flags now. Well, or hopefully she's decided to part ways with him and is looking for red flags on any new people that he's dating. I ran across this a lot when I was doing rideshare. 99% of all people who say I'll tip you in the app don't. They just don't. And they're trying to impress somebody in their party or whatever. And the ones that tip, 99% don't say anything. They just do it.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.